If you've been practicing pregnancy yoga or you're a pregnancy yoga teacher, you already know that yoga is more than just the movement. But did you know that what you think about and what you say about yourself is going to impact your experience of pregnancy and birth as well? So today I want to show you 3 different yoga tools that you can include in your pregnancy yoga classes. So affirmations, visualizations, and meditations. How you can use these tools to help your students feel more calm and connected during pregnancy. Make sure that you stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to explain exactly where and when to put these tools in your pregnancy yoga classes. And if you're brand new to teaching pregnancy yoga, I have a free mini course to help you to teach pregnancy yoga safely. That will be linked in the description box below for you. Pregnancy is a time of huge transformation, and with that can come a lot of fear. The words we tell ourselves about those fears matters a lot. Introducing your students to affirmations that they can use and how they can use them in your classes is going to help shift them from fear to trust. Using affirmations regularly in our pregnancy yoga classes helps to remind our students that their bodies are capable and strong, that their babies are safe, and that they are supported in this practice. So how can you start using affirmations in your pregnancy yoga classes? You could start your class with an affirmation and then repeat the affirmation at key points throughout the class to bring in that repetition. After class, you could encourage your students to journal about any thoughts that came up throughout the class and to write down any affirmations that are helpful to them. So this practice can help them just to connect with what are those automatic negative thoughts that come up and what is the language that resonates with me to help shift that into the positive. I often encourage my students to repeat affirmations, particularly in challenging poses. So they'll move them into something that challenges their body physically and then give them an affirmation to work with, to repeat to themselves and to see how that feels whilst they're being physically challenged. This is a great way to prepare for birth because we're practicing being uncomfortable in our body, using the breath and using affirmations to move through it. There is no right or wrong when it comes to what affirmations to use in your pregnancy yoga classes. Some of my favorites are, I am strong and my body knows exactly what to do. I soften, I open, I trust. And also, each breath brings me closer to my baby. You can also encourage your students to choose one affirmation at the start of class to come back to throughout the class at certain points. So this might be chosen through discussion. Maybe you hold a little bit of a circle at the start of the class to check in with all your students, or you could even put out affirmation cards where they can choose an affirmation at random and really lean into that trust that whatever they pick is going to be what they need to hear right now. So working in the pregnancy space, I hope we're past the point of thinking that meditation is an added extra to our yoga class and really leaning into knowing that it's an integral part of a pregnancy yoga practice. Getting our students to buy into that same value, though, can sometimes be harder. So I think you have to meet them where they're at. Talk about how pregnancy can be overwhelming at the best of times, how they're dealing with hormones all over the place, their body is changing rapidly, they might be experiencing aches and pains in their body. They're also probably feeling fearful about birth and really uncertain in this experience. And really talking to how meditation can be a balm for that, where we can sit in a space where all of the conflicting feelings that we're experiencing can come into focus, and instead of feeling all over the place, we can start bringing a sense of calm to our emotional experience throughout pregnancy. So a practice of meditation is really going to help us to notice those automatic negative thoughts that come up. And this is true for people who are practicing when they're not pregnant, but especially true when you're pregnant and you're leading towards this really big event of birth and meeting your baby. Those automatic negative thoughts can be really loud in our heads. So the practice of meditation is really just allowing some space to notice those automatic thoughts and to start trusting that we don't have to believe everything we think. This simple shift is going to dramatically change our experience of pregnancy and hopefully of birth as well. So in your pregnancy yoga classes, you might be talking about how a meditation practice can help to calm that emotional roller coaster that might be going on for your students. And really talking about while meditation might feel like a waste of time, because for a lot of women, we have been conditioned to think that doing nothing is a waste of time. But we'd be talking to our students about how meditation is actually helping us to notice those emotions and to be really proactive about doing something to ease them if they need calming, or to work through them so that we don't take them out on our loved ones or those who are closest to us. Because let's be honest, it's always the people who we love the most that tend to cop our highs and lows of the emotional turmoil of pregnancy. So what types of pregnancy meditations can you include in your yoga classes? There are hundreds of different pregnancy yoga meditations that you could include in your classes, and I teach lots of these in my teacher training. But a few of my favorites are just a breath awareness meditation, where you would guide your students to bring their hands to their belly and just move through an awareness of, I breathe in calm and I breathe out tension. You could introduce a mantra meditation where you use something like Soham, meaning I am that, and get your students to repeat that to themselves, perhaps while swaying in a yoga pose or even just in a comfortable seat, maybe just before you lead into a Shavasana. And then finally, one of my favorites, a loving kindness meditation, where you'll guide your students into a place of relaxation and then guide their awareness to their baby. So visualizing their baby within them, and then you're encouraging them to whisper or to say silently to their babies, you are loved, you are safe. And I also love to add on to the end of these meditations a time and space where they visualize their whole body and then they send that same message to themselves. It's a beautiful practice to encourage oxytocin, that love hormone, that connection between mother and baby. And it's a really nice way to get them into that beautiful relaxed state during your pregnancy yoga classes. And finally, I want to encourage you to use visualization in your pregnancy yoga classes. We know that our minds and our bodies are deeply connected. What we imagine, we become. The way that we think about our world becomes our experience. If we think something is going to be painful and scary, we literally create that experience for ourselves because we're scared and tight and tense. And this is particularly true for the experience of birth. Whereas if we're able to relax and imagine that everything will unfold exactly as it should and lean into trust, then we're more likely to create that experience. Even if something negative does come up during the experience of labor and birth, we're going to be in a better position to handle it because we're going to be relaxed, we're going to be thinking more clearly, and we're going to have tools to be able to move through that fear response rather than starting from a place of tension and fear. Visualization in your pregnancy yoga classes is so important because it helps your students to feel more in control and empowered, which is something your students are going to be looking for throughout their experience of pregnancy. It will help them to reduce their fear of the unknown, which is so important for first-time mums. If you've never been through the experience of birth, it's really hard to visualize that for yourself. So it can be really powerful to have that experience in a pregnancy yoga class where you're guided through visualizing your baby, really connecting with your baby, maybe even being guided through an experience of a peaceful and calm birth, so that you're practicing that internally and more likely able to believe that can be your experience. So if you practice these in a pregnancy yoga class, maybe guiding your students through imagining their safe space where they feel really calm and contented, they can come back to this practice when they're in that maybe slightly stressful space during labor where they sort of hit the point where they're like, can't do this. Perhaps their partner or their support person can guide them through that visualization. If they've practiced it throughout their pregnancy in your classes, they're more likely to be able to drop in during labor and birth, and the practice will be more helpful to them. So other than that safe space visualization that I mentioned, a couple of others that I like are a rising wave meditation where you're guiding your students through imagining they're breathing up with a rising wave and then floating down the other side. So this visualization is about teaching them to use this idea of the wave to help them get through these contractions and not feeling like the contraction will go on forever, because we know they don't. They come in waves. You can also use the visualization of a flower opening to help encourage this idea of the body opening. Yes, it's an internal process of the cervix opening, but we can still visualize this space, and through the practice of visualization, help our body to relax and calm, which allows the opening to happen. So how do you actually include all of these practices? And I know there are hundreds of practices that you probably personally love and want to put in every class. I think the first thing to know is you don't have to put everything into every class. Sometimes it can be more powerful just to have 1 or 2 practices in each class. That way your students are going to get a really deep understanding of that practice. Maybe it comes up a few times throughout the class so that they get a few different opportunities to practice. You could practice it first in a seated position, maybe move the practice into a challenging standing position, and then bring it back again in Shavasana at the end. And this would be a nice way to practice something and to really feel like you understand the practice. It could be slightly different each time, but giving your students a really good understanding of the tool that you're trying to teach them in that class. Hopefully you're teaching your pregnancy yoga classes in blocks or terms. So it's really common to teach a 5 or 6 week block of pregnancy yoga classes so that you're building community and relationships with your students. And this also helps you to not feel like you have to put everything in a single class, because you do have those 5 or 6 weeks to build these tools up so that by the end of that term block, they have a few tools or practices in their toolkit to take into labor and birth. So a way to include these practices in a single yoga class could be that you could start with an affirmation, or it might be framed as an intention, and then bring this affirmation in throughout the class in different poses. You could do a short breathwork meditation before you get into the movement practice. And then during Shavasana, you could bring in a visualization of some sort that perhaps brings back that affirmation and perhaps brings back that breath work. So really tying in the practices together. Really, the ideas are endless, but when you're planning your pregnancy yoga classes, rather than just thinking about the physical asana that you're going to teach, I also want you to think about how can I bring in meditation, affirmation, and visualization? Which tools are going to match the theme of this class, what I'm trying to convey, the message that I want to talk about, and how can I weave these tools into my class really seamlessly so they feel natural and connected to the other work that you're doing. And then I think it's really important to also encourage your students to practice these tools at home. Whilst doing it once a week in your hour-long pregnancy yoga class is great, if they can also practice affirmations at other points in their day, they're going to be better prepared to use those tools during labor and birth, because we know when we get into challenging situations, we go back into a bit of an automatic state. So if we can make these tools practiced and really automatic in our body, our muscle memory remembers it, we're more likely to draw on these tools when it gets challenging in labor and birth. If you'd like to learn more about how to guide your students confidently in pregnancy yoga classes, I want to invite you to join my online pregnancy yoga teacher training and community. The link will be in the description box below. And tell me in the comments, what are some of your favorite practices, whether that be meditation or visualization? What types are your favorite to include in your pregnancy yoga classes?